OEE, the office of Beckman.
They only wait an hour say on some of the work.
Today in this Wednesday, we're going to talk about pharmacology of allergic rhinitis, cough, and cold. And I actually don't think we need 2 lectures for this topic. Because usually we only have 1 lecture for this topic. So on this Wednesday, it's probably going to be we'll work on some questions together, and very likely those questions will appear in a different format in the exam. So I strongly encourage you guys to come. And then next week is still mine, right?
Yes.
So here my lectures, yeah. So we're going to talk about the respiratory disease and related pharmacology. So that's the plan. Okay, so today let's look at the pharmacology of allergic rhinitis, cough, and cold. Okay. So what is allergic rhinitis? It is also called hay fever, and is a diagnosis associated with a group of symptoms affecting the nose. And these symptoms occur when you breathe in something you're allergic to, like pollen, for example, such as dust, animal dander, or pollen. And symptoms can also occur when you eat a food that you're allergic to. So you breathe in or some food that you become allergic to. So let's look at the pathophysiology a little bit. So here I'm showing you, what cells and what factors are involved in causing the allergic rhinitis. So we see an allergen here. Let's say this is a pollen, okay, and then it went to the dendritic cell, okay, and then this passed to T cell. So let me ask you this question. You guys learned the pathophysiology, right, in your first year. The immune system is one of the systems you learned before. So what is the role of the dendritic cell here? Just remember. What does dendritic cell do here? So we have allergen, and then we have dendritic cell, and this will further activate T cell, right? And then T cell will secrete tons of cytokines, chemokines, here like interleukin 3, IL-4, IL-5, IL-5, and then each of them will then activate a bunch of cells, okay, and including B cells. And B cells can secrete antibody, right? And this will further activate other cells, okay? And IL-9 activates master cell, okay? And master cell can secrete what? Histamine. One of the major. So master cell has a lot of granules, as you can see, and a lot of them will release factors including histamine. So that's why during allergy, we take the antihistamine drug, right? So that's to fight the histamine released by master cells. So again, what is the role of the dendritic cell here?
Activate.
APC.
Says it stores information.
APC.
Yeah, APC. What does APC mean?
Antigen presenting cell.
Antigen presenting cell. Very good. What do you say?
It looks as if it stores, receives informations.
Receive the information. That's actually one of the roles of the antigen presenting cell, right? It receives the information from the pollen, for example, allergen, and then it processes it. Okay, it will be processed. See, it become different when it's been presented on the surface again after being processed, and then this can be recognized by the T cell. Okay, so this is the antigen presenting cell. Okay, so this is a very important cell in immune reaction, right? So we I'm not sure if you still remember, the B cell itself can also play a role as an antigen presenting cell, APC. And then it processes itself, and this is actually a process in a B cell maturation. And once the B cell is matured, then it can release antibody. So this is some older knowledge that you guys learned before. All right, so I found this video on YouTube, and I think it's really cool. It explains the pathophysiology of allergic rhinitis very clearly. Although it didn't mention all those cells, there are some minor differences. It more focused on the master cell and some other basophil. But overall, the process it explained is really cool. So I would like to play it. Okay, I also put the link here, so you can also take a look after the class.
So what is allergic rhinitis? Well, the part of the word rhine comes from the Greek root that means nose, like in rhinoplasty or rhinoceros. And itis just means inflammation. So this is an inflammation of the nose. And allergic just means that it's caused by allergies. So let's go ahead and draw our nose here. Now this is the outside of the nose, but the inside of the nose is covered with a smooth lining. And that smooth lining is called mucosa. And mucosa lines everything inside your nose. But it's not just totally smooth in there. There are these bones that stick out that are called concha. They're called concha because they're kind of coiled like little snail shells. Draw those in like this. These concha kind of stick out from the side of the wall of the nose, and they can take up almost all the space in there. But in order to figure out what's happening a little bit better, we have to zoom in. We have to zoom in all the way to the level of the cells. So here I'm drawing some of the cells of the nasal mucosa. These are big globular pink cells. But there's a couple cells in here that are different. These are cells of your immune system. The ones that we're worried about, the immune cells in the nose that deal with allergic rhinitis, are called mast cells and basophils. So let's say this particular nose, this particular set of cells has allergic rhinitis. What exactly is happening? Well, in allergic rhinitis, like with any allergy, your body has an overreaction to some sort of stimulus in the environment. And that stimulus is called an allergen. Now let's take a little side note here and talk about the allergens that are common to people who suffer from allergic rhinitis. The most common culprit is pollen. And pollen can come from trees or grass. In fact, hay can cause allergic rhinitis, and it gives rise to one of the other terms called hay fever. Although technically allergic rhinitis isn't a fever. Pollen also tends to be seasonal. In other words, some types of pollen are out in the spring, others in the fall, and that gives rise to yet another term that's synonymous with allergic rhinitis or seasonal allergies. Other things that can act as allergens would be mold or animal dander. But basically anything that can get into the air that you can inhale can act as an allergen to somebody who suffers from allergic rhinitis. So let's say this nose and this group of cells are out there in the environment, doing their thing, breathing, and suck up something that's going to act as an allergen. So that allergen goes into the nose. We'll erase a little bit here. And that allergen is going to come into contact with this mast cell over here. Being a mast cell or a basophil, on its surface it has a particular protein that's shaped a little bit like a Y, and that protein is called an immune globulin, referred to Ig. And this particular type of immune globulin is called IgE. There are other types of immune globulins, IgG and IgM, but for allergic rhinitis, we're concerned with IgE. This little break.
Okay, so what cell made those IgE?
The mass.
The months.
What cell made those? Where does those IgE protein come from?
The mass.
So mast.
No, those are the master cell, right? Those are master cell. On the surface, there are some IgE. So these are actually come from B cells. So IgE is immunoglobulin, is the antibody, right? So antibody is made by B cells.
And that IgE molecule, again, just a protein sitting on the surface of this basophil, is going to alert that cell to its presence. Now, in a normal person, the reaction that that cell has should be pretty minimal. I mean, it's just a grain of pollen. It's not like it's an infectious agent that's going to go in and give your body all sorts of trouble. But in a person that suffers from allergic rhinitis, this cell overreacts, and it overreacts big time. When it sees that pollen grain, it starts letting out little molecules into its environment that tell all the cells around it to get excited as well. So this whole group of nasal mucosa gets overreacted. The most common type of molecule that's used for signaling here is called a histamine. So now that these immune cells are overreacting and causing all the cells around them to overreact to this allergen, we can predict what is going to happen inside the nose on a larger scale. Well, the first thing is that histamine is going to cause all sorts of problems with inflammation. And that can be really severe. The mucosa can thicken up big time and get really engorged and edematous, swollen. And that happens all throughout the nose, because these basophils or mast cells aren't just sitting in one particular area, they're scattered everywhere. I'm going to draw some of this inflammation on these ridges in the nose, the turbinates, but it's happening kind of everywhere. And in addition to becoming swollen, this mucosa is going to start to overproduce mucus. And that mucus is going to drip down along the turbinates. It's going to drip down the sides of the nose here. It's going to form big drips that hang down inside your nose. It's going to pool in the base of your nasal cavity here. Draw a few other drips of mucus. Now I'm drawing this mucus in green, but it's usually actually clear. As you know, or anybody that suffers with allergic rhinitis knows, this can come right out your nose here. And of course your nose is not an isolated thing. And as this mucus pools in your nasal cavity, it's going to head down this way. And that is towards your throat. So you can cough this stuff up as well. But your throat isn't the only thing that's attached to your nose. In fact, there's a tube that lives right about here that opens up just underneath this first ridge, right about there. And as the mucosa swells up, it can swell that tube shut. And that tube is called the nasolacrimal duct. And it connects your nose to your eye. And its job is to drain the tears out of your eye and into your nose where you don't even notice them. Now, when that duct gets swollen shut, the tears don't have anywhere to go. And that's going to lead to watery eyes. There's another tube that can be affected at the back of your throat. And that tube is connected to your ear. And it's called the eustachian tube. And similarly, if the swelling gets bad enough, it can block off the eustachian tube and cause fluid to back up in this. And that's going to lead to symptoms with your ear, particularly stuffiness and decreased ability to hear. Of course, there's also nerves in your nose. I'll draw one of the nerves going off to the turbinate here. And these nerves ultimately end in your brain. And as they get inflamed with all the processes happening in your nose, they become irritated and send signals to your body, particularly the signal to sneeze. And then if the swelling continues to get bigger and more pronounced, it can actually completely block off this entire nose. And when that happens, even air can't get by. And when air can't get by, breathing becomes a problem. So let's recap the symptoms. So first, you get swelling and congestion. If you block off the nasolacrimal duct, you can get watery eyes. If you block off the eustachian tube, you can get stuffed up ears. And that nasal mucosa is continually making mucus, and that causes nasal drip. The irritated nerves cause sneezing, and the blocked air passages leads to difficulty breathing through the nose. And these symptoms are going to vary from person to person. Some people's overreactive immune systems are severely overreactive. These symptoms are really, really bad, or they're happening all the time. Other people may just have a little nasal drip, and that's all. Some people's anatomy may be such that their nasolacrimal duct is easily blocked by just a little bit of swelling, and that can lead to really bad watery eyes, but not much else. It all depends on the person. It for a few days if you're exposed just briefly, or it can happen year-round if you're allergic to many things that are always in your environment. Additionally, sometimes it's really easy to figure out what it is. Sometimes it's really hard and you can't ever pin down exactly what it is. But if you remember the underlying principles of an overreactive immune cell sitting in your nose, and you know a little bit about the anatomy of the nose, you can predict all of the symptoms that happen in this situation.
Okay. Nice view. So,
So how does somebody get diagnosed with allergic rhinitis?
alright, so this basically tells us, how allergic rhinitis occur, with a basic, pathophysiology on humans. Here's our- So, the top, it mentioned the symptoms, right, for this, allergic, rhinitis. Nasal congestion, now we know, we understand, how those are, caused. And we also got a runny nose, rhinorrhea, okay, watery eyes, if the nasal lacrimal duct is blocked, and stuffed ears, okay, if the eustachian tube is blocked, and sneezing, okay, which is caused by irritated nerves. And for some people, also conjunctivitis, sinusitis, and asthma. All those symptoms. It really, like the video just mentioned, it varies from person to person. Okay, so allergic rhinitis is seasonal and perennial, and it is triggered by airborne allergens and when allergens bind to the IgE or master cells, as the video showed. And that will trigger release of inflammatory mediators such as histamine, leukotrienes, which is not mentioned in the video, and other stuff. Okay, but histamine is one of the major mediators. All right, so now let's take a look at the drugs that another one is olopatadine, okay? So those are indicated for allergic rhinitis in adults and in children over 12 years old, okay? So they're not recommended for children underneath 12 years old. And the systemic absorption can be sufficient to cause somnolence, okay? And can also cause nose bleeding, and it can have some anti-cholinergic effects, or, some people found they have unpleasant taste. Another one, okay, is the intranasal cromolyn sodium. Okay. This drug reduces symptoms by inhibiting the degranulation of sensitized mast cells, okay, thereby blocking the release of inflammatory and allergic mediators. So this shows it's different from the antihistamine medications. The antihistamine medications reduce the action of histamine themselves, but this one actually inhibits the releasing of the antihistamine from mast cells. So it inhibits mast cells, but the antihistamine reduces the action of histamine themselves. Okay, so this is a major difference between cromolyn sodium and the antihistamine medications. Okay, and it should be taken before, as a preventative method. And so basically, that means it should be administered before symptoms start. Usually, response develops into 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, and it has very minimal adverse reactions. It's compared with other drugs for allergic rhinitis. This one is actually cause much less adverse reactions. So the other one is the symptomimetics. Okay, so this one can reduce nasal congestion. It does not reduce rhinorrhea, which is a runny nose, sneezing or itching. Okay, sneezing or itching caused by irritated nerve. So this one specifically reduces nasal congestion, and it activates alpha adrenergic receptors on nasal blood vessels. Okay, and it has some adverse effects: rebound congestion, CNS stimulation, cardiovascular effects, and stroke. And it may, cause some drug abuse as well. So it can be taken orally or intranasally. Okay. So if it's taken intranasally, if it's a topical administration, then this drug should not be taken longer than 5 consecutive days. It is either in the drops or sprays format. Okay. So for the topical agents act more quickly than oral agents and are usually more effective. And oral agents act longer than topical preparations. And systemic effects occur primarily with oral agents, and topical agents usually elicit this response only when doses is higher than recommended, and the rebound congestion is common with prolonged use of topical agents, but rare with oral agents. Okay. So this is the symptomimetics, and there are a few of them. Okay, so like the phenylephrine, epiprine, pseudoepiprine. Okay, and also there are some in the combination form. So we have antihistamine and sympathomimetic combinations, and there are 3 of them. And also I put the brand name in the bracket. Okay, so during the exam, if I ask you, what category does this drug belong to? Okay, you need to know. If I give you the name of Apiprine, for example, then you need to know it's a sympathomatics. And if I give you this, for example, the montelukast, okay, then you should know it's a combination. So this one is, when you see the MAB, what does it mean? I think this is something we learned last semester, right?
we see what?
It's a monoclonal.
It's monoclonal antibody. This is a, monoclonal antibody, yeah. Alright, so, rhinitis, we just talked about rhinitis, and then now let's take a look at the cough, drugs for cough, okay? So those drugs are anti-tussive, okay? So they suppresses cough, okay? And there are opioid antitussives, okay? Codeine and hydrocodone, okay? And we also have non-opioid antitussives, okay? For example, I put those 3 years. That's something that you also want to know. And
Can you
then
repeat
also,
that?
sorry.
Can you repeat what you just said?
So there are 2 categories underneath the antitussive, right? Opioid and the non-opioid. And then you need to know the name that I put here. You need to know, which category it belongs to. What is usage of those drugs?
Thank you.
And then we have the expectorants, okay? So like the guaifenesin, okay, and we have 2 of them here. So those drugs, they work by thinning and losing mucus in airways, okay? Clearing congestion and making breathing easier, okay? But it has some side effects: dizziness, headache, drowsiness, rash, nausea, vomiting, stomach upset. And so we got this mucolytics. Okay. So there are hypertonic saline, acetylcysteine. Okay. So acetylcysteine has this mucolytic action, and this action is related to the sulfohydryl group in the molecular. And this group probably opens disulfur linkage in mucus, thereby lowering the viscosity. Okay. That's how it works. And mucolytics react directly with mucus to make it more watery. So because it has a high sulfur content, it has this rotten egg smell, okay? And also it may trigger bronchial spasm. So that's mucolitis. Alright, so for the common cold, which is another name for the acute upper respiratory viral infection. It has all those symptoms, like runny nose, nasal congestion, cough, sneezing, sore throat, etc. And in kids, the fever is quite common, but in adults it's relatively rare, and it is self-limited. It's usually in upper respiratory tract, and it's usually benign. So there are no cure for virus infection. Usually there's no cure. We just treat the symptoms. And you got runny nose, we treat the runny nose symptoms, and we help with the nasal congestion symptoms, etc. So there are a lot of over-the-counter cold remedies. They usually contain 2 or more of the following: like nasal decongestant, okay, antitussives, analgesic, and antihistamine, or caffeine. Okay. The caffeine, the effect of caffeine is to offset the effect of antihistamine, because antihistamine can make you drowsy. I don't know if you guys are taking antihistamine. It actually makes you drowsy. But caffeine, can offset that effect and makes you more awake. Alright, so there are the pediatric OTC cold remedies. Okay, it is used with caution in young children. But usually it should be avoided in children younger than 4 to 6 years old, and it use only products labeled for pediatric use. for the next week. So there are three, last semester I think is 3 lectures, but this semester somehow I was told to give 4 lectures on those topics. And also because the arrangement for the integrated exam, we have more exams than before. So this semester I was asked to make 36 questions out of basically 3 lectures. Yeah, that I gave last semester. Last semester I only need to make 15 questions. So this semester I have to make 36 questions for 3 lectures. So that means I'll probably ask a lot of details. Okay, so that's something that you need to be aware of. So and that's why I decided to give you one lecture. We just work on the questions. Okay, so then you know what kind of question may appear in the exam. So that will be this Wednesday or maybe next Wednesday after I finish all my lectures. Then we just on the questions. Okay. So I haven't decided, what exam questions that I